Hey everyone, welcome to Cool Chess. Does it often happen that you manage to get a better position, and then because of a silly calculation error you end up losing the game? Don't worry, we can help you with that. Effective calculation is something you can learn, and now we'll tell you how to improve your calculation skills. In this video, you'll get some really useful tips, you'll see famous games related to the topic, and we'll also cover the most important tactical motifs and checkmate patterns. Okay, it's quite a lot, let's get started. To warm up, let's dive into a famous game in which something pretty shocking happened. The game was played in 2006 by former world champion Vladimir Kramnik against the chess program Deep Fritz. This game wasn't some friendly blitz match, it was the second game of a 6-game match, with nothing less than $1 million at stake. In this position, Vladimir Kramnik, playing as black to everyone's surprise, played Queen e3, which wasn't a good idea. How about a 5-second challenge? What did the computer play here? Of course, the computer played Queen h7 checkmate without mercy. How on earth could it happen that a brilliant player like Vladimir Kramnik misses a one-move checkmate? The reason for the blunder is obvious. He hadn't seen this video yet in 2006. And now let's see how to calculate accurately and what we can do to avoid blunders like that. The first and most important thing you need to do to improve your calculation skill is to effectively reduce the number of variations you have to calculate. Did you know that after 3 moves there are 121 million possible positions in chess? Well, that's quite a lot, isn't it? No matter how well you can calculate, you can't evaluate every single possible move. But if you have enough experience, then usually you'll only need to choose from about 2 or 3 lines. But don't get me wrong, if in a position you see 4 or 5 possible moves and you can't choose which one to play, that doesn't mean you're a bad player. That means you're probably not familiar enough with the typical plans of the position. In this case, you need to work on the opening part a bit more, and you should try to stop your opponent from leading you into unfamiliar territory. Our video on choosing openings helps with this. Check it out. Okay, the next important thing you need for calculating well is effective time management. To have the chance to calculate all the important variations, good time management is crucial. This means that you play the obvious moves quickly, but you don't mind spending time on important decisions. Okay, sounds easy, but how do we decide which move is obvious? During a game, a really big part of the moves are forced. There are obvious trades and forcing checks, and it's easy to react well to these. Besides these, what often saves you a lot of time is asking the right question. It's useful if you don't just look at what happens if you make a move. Also ask yourself the question, what happens if I don't make the move? If you ask yourself this question, then sometimes there's no need to calculate. You can realize that if you don't make that move, you're going to lose anyway. So in this case, I know it sounds stupid, but first we move, then we calculate. Why? Because after your opponent's move, there are fewer variations to choose from, so your calculation will be more precise. But be careful, as the saying says, the exception that proves the rule. In some cases, an in-between move, or we can call it intermezzo, can happen, like an intermediate check before recapturing a piece. So it's important to keep your eyes open, stay sharp so you don't miss something like this. Okay, and now let's see what kind of position typically require more thinking time. There are moves that can determine the result of the game, like a tactic involving a sacrifice that's potentially winning. Here you can think of your thinking time like an investment. For example, if before calculation you think there's a 30% chance the move leads to a decisive advantage, then the time you used has a high expected benefit, so it's worth spending time calculating that move. However, in these positions, don't forget the importance of simple chess. Don't take unnecessary risks. If you have a good position, don't exchange it for a dubious one. Another situation where it's worth thinking is when there is a major change in the position structure or in the number of pieces. Have the queens been traded? Has the pawn structure changed a lot? There's a good chance you need to reconsider your plans, which is super important, so you gotta spend time on it. You could see an example of this in one of our previous videos, where we analyzed the game between Magnus Carlsen and Evgeny Tomashevsky. It's a pretty good game, by the way. If you haven't seen it, then check it out. The third kind of situation where it's worth thinking more is when you end up in an unusual position. Just think back to Kramnik's game. The world champion's blunder happened because the knight on f8 was in a really strange spot. If, for example, the knight had controlled the h7 square from g5, then Kramnik definitely wouldn't have missed the checkmate. Okay, you are doing great. Now let's move on and see what the next factor is that makes your calculation more effective. It is minimizing the possibility of making mistakes. As you might have seen, I sometimes quote from famous chess players, so here comes another one. "The blunders are all there on the board waiting to be made," said Saviely Tartakower, Polish chess grandmaster. And that's very true. There's always a chance for a blunder, and it greatly improves your performance if you minimize the danger of blunders. Let's see what kind of dangers might be hiding in your position. The first one is undefended pieces. If a piece is undefended, there's a danger it can be captured. A single undefended piece usually isn't a problem if it's not currently under attack, but having more undefended pieces create the possibility for a double attack. Let's look at an example. This is a super simple position. If it's white's move, white is winning. However, if black moves, it's a draw, because black can take advantage of white's undefended pieces and save the game with the move king d4. Okay, let's move on. The second danger is the danger of check. A check on its own isn't necessarily dangerous, but it can be a problem when you have other dangers too. For example, combined with an undefended piece, they can cause problems. Let's see an example. In this position, white has an undefended piece, the bishop on g5, and there's also the danger of check, so after queen a5 check, white loses a piece. Okay, let's move on. The fourth factor that can help you calculate better is pretty obvious: practice. Getting to know and practicing tactical motifs and checkmating patterns is super important. Chess patterns make calculation faster and easier. They are like calculating in your head what's in brackets while doing math. Think of the smothered checkmate. This is a sequence of 4 moves, but experienced chess players practically use it as one unit of calculation, as if it were one move. Let's quickly check out a few examples for each one. We're planning a video on this topic where you can learn about them in more depth. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. Okay, so first let's see the tactical motifs. The first one is the fork, which is a tactic where a single piece attacks 2 or more of the opponent's pieces simultaneously. The second one is the pin, when an attacked piece cannot move without exposing a more valuable piece, or the king behind it along the line of attack. An absolute pin is when the piece behind is the king. A relative pin is when it's another piece. The third one is the skewer, which is the opposite of the pin. The more valuable piece is the one directly attacked. When the more valuable piece moves away, the less valuable piece behind it is exposed to capture. The next one is the discovered attack, which is an attack created when one piece moves out of the way, opening a line for another piece behind it to attack an enemy piece. If the piece that moves also gives check, it's a discovered check. Okay, there are still some more, but now I want to show only one more important tactic, which is deflection. It means distracting a piece from its defensive duties. These tactical motifs can also be combined. Here's an example of the combination of the fork and the pin. Okay, after the tactical motifs, let's see some checkmating patterns. The first one is the back rank mate. Back rank mate happens when a player delivers checkmate by attacking the back rank of the opponent. The next one is the smothered mate, which is named that because the king doesn't have any squares to move to due to its own pieces, so just a knight is needed for the checkmate. Now comes the checkmate on the h7 square. Checkmate on the h7 square with the queen by white is very common. This can be helped by a light squared bishop, a rook on the h-file, or a knight usually from the g5 square, but as you could see from Kramnik's game, sometimes even from the f8 square. This checkmate is often prepared with a sacrifice called the Greek gift, which I've already mentioned in one of our previous videos. Especially in games of lower-rated players, checkmate on the f7 square is frequent if the black king hasn't castled. This most often happens with the queen, but it can also happen with a bishop. There are many typical checkmates that can be related to the absence of the fianchettoed bishop, so I'll show you some examples. A position full of holes makes checkmating a lot easier, so that's why weakening the pawn shield is a key part of a well-planned attack. Okay, there are still a bunch of different ways to checkmate, for example, the opera mate, the Arabian mate, the Anastasia mate. Of course, you don't need to know the names of these. The important thing is to solve many, many puzzles, and you will learn these checkmate patterns. You can find puzzles among our short videos too. Practice with them. Okay, well done. We learned quite a lot today, but if you want to learn even more, don't forget to subscribe and check out our other videos too. And if you have any questions or need help with your chess improvement, feel free to write a comment and we'll do our best to help you. I really hope you liked it. See you in our next video.